Welcome to the Pharma Insights Unplugged, a platform where we engage with the thought leaders shaping the future of healthcare, medical affairs, and clinical research. I'm your host, Dr. Amit Dang, and through this series, we aim to explore the evolving landscape of pharmaceuticals, digital health, and evidence based decision making, bringing valuable insights to professionals across the industry. Today, we have Dr. Viraj Suvarna in our studio. Dr. Viraj is a seasoned medical affairs leader with over 2 decades of experience spanning pharmaceuticals, biologics, and healthcare strategy. Having held key positions at the global pharma giants with Roche, Biocon Biologics, Boehringer Ingelheim, Dr. Reddy's, and Pfizer, he has been instrumental in shaping medical strategy, regulatory affairs, clinical operations, and real world evidence generation. Knowing for his sharp insights, outcome driven approach, and ability to integrate science with business, Dr. Suvarna is a visionary in medical affairs and market access. His philosophy of tough love in leadership and his deep understanding of biosimilars, precision medicine, and pharmacovigilance make him an invaluable voice in the industry. Today, as an independent consultant, he continues to shape the future of medical affairs with his thought leadership and strategy acumen. So, Dr. Viraj Suvarna, good morning and welcome to Pharma Insights Unplugged.
Morning, Amit, and thank you very much for all those words. The last 15 or more than 15 years, actually, the medical director. So, which means it's not just medical affairs to the entire gamut. But you're right. Among the five, medical affairs is the one that I've been closest.
So, sir, your career spans over 2 decades in leading medical affairs, and as you mentioned, being a medical director for some of the biggest pharma companies. So, what key changes have you witnessed in the role of medical affairs over all these years?
When I began way back in 1998, we didn't really have this, the MCI, which had come out with that Gazette notification. So for 10 years, that was medical affairs, which was basically, doing all those customer-facing meetings, especially at the time of launch. Although we were generally pharmacologists, yet we had to present to clinicians of varied specialties depending on the product that we were launching. And it was very challenging, but at the same time, very satisfying because you really had to prepare a lot, especially when, there are some specific questions on the product from a company perspective. It is best if the company medical person in a very fair, balanced, and unbiased manner is able to answer, because that is where internal customers are happy that their medical person is able to hold his or her own against these, opinion leaders. So that is one change that I've seen. And the second, of course, is this heavy dependence on what is called as real world evidence. Earlier, it used to be, we talk more about the randomized controlled clinical trials. The study has happened in a representative sample of patients, but now you need that and then extrapolate to the individual patient in your practice. So that also is an art. Then, of course, now it's all about the real world, because as you know, there are limitations to randomized controlled clinical trial evidence. So these are two changes, and actually, with the advent of digital medical affairs and in particular data science and now, of course, artificial intelligence, that also is becoming extremely important in connecting with our doctors. So we did key changes like that.
Got it. I think medical affairs need to keep up the pace with lot many things which are happening both globally and of course the advent of the technology, and especially with the Gen AI and now about the agentic AI, the way things are changing. One really need to be on toes. So you have been a champion of integrating regulatory affairs, clinical operations, and pharmacovigilance into a creative strategy. So how do you see these functions evolving in today's pharma landscape?
Yeah, this is one area where I feel I have been able to really get them all to be one with each other, one with the business. So there are basically five functions. Clinops, the ones who generate the data; regulatory, the one who take it to the regulator and get permission to launch the product; medical affairs, then try and communicate the value of that medicine; and then, of course, pharmacovigilance and quality. So these five functions, although they work in silos and you need to break the silo, because ultimately these five functions are interdependent.
Absolutely.
Point is that all five functions need to work with each other and the business. And that is where the true value of medical as a support or enabling function to the business comes from.
When we talk about medical affairs, it's both be it an internal stakeholder or external stakeholder, and we know that There are so many internal stakeholders itself. Like we have so many different departments, and bridging the gap between to bring a common value story about a molecule is something which is always a challenging task and where medical affairs can do the needful.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more point. For example, cleanups. Right? And then for these potential blockbusters, a single day delay in the global clinical trial results can mean the company can lose up to $1 million a day. When you report adverse events, it's not negative or adverse at all. It doesn't come in the way of business, but it protects the business in
True.
case there is an accident. That is important.
Sir, one of your recent LinkedIn posts discusses the concept of employable age versus the retirement age. So, how do you see the role of senior medical leaders evolving in this rapidly changing industry?
The point I was trying to make is that when we look at what is called as chronological age, we have decided maybe 58 or 60. What's important is when I say employable age, I mean, is that individual still able to really add value to the business? That is important. And this is something which you can assess even while the individual is in the company, because it's not that you only interview the person at the beginning when you select the person.
True.
After maybe 3 to 5 years, you can still interview to find out whether the individual is really able to keep pace with the changes. So that should be a criterion rather than only the age.
And especially in today's world, the way things are changing so drastically, agility is definitely the key. As a medical affairs or as any professional working in the industry, like we always talk about CMEs for doctors. I think that is what needs to be done for the people working different departments of the pharma companies as well. They also need to upskill and upgrade. True. So coming on to the next question, so you have deep expertise in biosimilars and biologics. So what are the biggest misconceptions surrounding biosimilars and what should physicians and policymakers focus on to ensure their optimal use?
People sometimes don't realize that they call the copycat molecule of a biologic a generic. But when you come to biologics, they are from a living organism. So
Yeah.
the extremely important is the process is the product. We have to show that it is similar, not the same. It can never be the same, similar
Yeah.
to the original reference file. Then actually you need to do animal studies also, a PK/PD study, and finally one phase 3 study. So at least that study needs to be adequately powered, well designed. The endpoints also need to be clinically relevant. The study duration needs to be adequate because, see, it's only that one study based on which this biosimilar is going to get approved
Yeah.
for all the indications, not only one indication. And if the study is not powered to pick up the difference, then how can we conclude that there is no statistical, the clinically meaningful difference in safety, efficacy, and immunogenicity of the
Right.
molecules?
So now the concept of precision medicine is transforming healthcare. I mean, based on your experience, what are the biggest challenges in implementing the precision medicine at scale, especially in the emerging markets?
Currently, those tests which can actually tell you about oncology, the biology of that tumor, those tests seem to be a little expensive. If somehow that can come down, then at scale it can go up. And so that's why it is important to be precise. And one last point I want to make is there is a slight difference between precision and personalized medicine, because how I see it is precision is more about that disease. Whereas personalized is about the person. And now, of course, with the comprehensive genome profiling, etc. So imagine if that fingerprint can tell me everything about that individual from a disease and response to drug perspective, then I can really
Right.
tailor treatment to that individual. So that's why I keep telling my field force also, and even my marketing and medical affairs colleagues that, rather than all the time try and say my drug is better than somebody else's drug, why can't we use
Yeah.
our own data to tell doctors that, in these kind of patients, you are going to get optimal response. But in some kind of patients, the response was not as great, either from
Right.
safety, efficacy. So it's like trying to help the doctor understand for this patient which drug is better, rather than saying this drug is better than some other.
Now we have touched upon on the real world evidence, and we know that it is becoming increasingly crucial in drug approvals and market access. So how do you see the role of RWE evolving, and what should pharma companies do to harness its full potential?
There are two forms of how we can get to this real world evidence. Even as we speak, data is getting generated. So my suggestion would be to identify those doctors who are interested in publications. So even as they're practicing, they kind of document the data in a very organized manner, follow up. And once the data becomes mature, they can call the agency and then do it the way I tell you. The
Yeah.
second important thing is for medical affairs to actually think, strategize at the unmet medical needs of the market around that product in that therapeutic area. And this you can do. One is by reading guidelines which tell you that in certain areas there is a need data, because otherwise they can't recommend anything. Plus, we talk to internal as well as external customers, and we'll get these ideas. And based on that, you have to now design a prospective study that will
Yeah.
generate real world evidence in the right way using some statistical techniques like
True.
propensity score mapping.
Right, sir.
Prospectively, at least what I can do is ensure that therapeutically naive patients are there in both the arms, and then it's up to the doctor. Let him decide in the real world which kind of patients he would like to put an existing standard of care and which kind of patients on the new drugs. These are ways in which you can actually use real world data. Of course, for regulatory purpose, and you need to involve the regulators right in the beginning.
True, sir. Because the only challenge, what I personally see, that doctors they don't have time to put as much data as they would like to, because they have to see a lot of patients. The ratio of doctors to patient is something which is difficult to manage. And then doctors always prioritizes patient over data, unlike what we usually see in European and US countries. So I guess that is one such the AI might just help
Yeah.
out doctors to put the data fed in quickly. So now, sir, with your vast experience in leadership, I mean, you have built and nurtured high-performing medical teams. So what advice would you give to young professionals looking to build a successful career in medical affairs?
I would like everyone to introspect as to why do they want to get into the industry. So if the reason is that the salaries are higher or we get to travel all across, then my advice is I'm not 100% sure that is the real reason that will
Okay.
sustain in your purpose. But if you feel that if I work in the industry, I will be able to impact many more people, then it is something that will give you satisfaction. I mean, if you enjoy what you do, you don't have to work a single day in your life. You will literally enjoy what you do. From a leadership perspective, it is about people management. It's not just about getting work done to them, but it's about getting them done through the work that is delegated to them. So you are able to, first of all, make them understand what are their strengths rather than only areas that improve. I think ultimately leadership is all about trying to bring out the leadership or the leader in every one of your team members.
Sir, the last question of the podcast for today. I mean, as you embark on your new journey as an independent consultant, so what are your key focus areas and how do you plan to contribute to the evolving pharma and healthcare ecosystem?
So I'll begin by saying that although I know I have put it as independent, I would like to put it as interdependent because we are all
Great.
interdependent. So while I
Absolutely.
would like to maybe offer my services to everyone, mainly the medical department, within the medical department, mainly medical affairs, and also the field force, and to some extent even marketing. But those are areas where I feel I can really, really help. I'm actually right now putting together what I can offer as
Amazing.
content in the form of workshops. And then it's up to people. Of course, I will go and meet them and tell them that this is exactly what I can do. One example is say to the field force, can I help them with the art and science of detailing a report? So rather than all the time take your iPad or visual aid or why can't I take the treatment and actually get into a discussion, a dialogue with my doctor, so
Got
that
it.
while I talk about the treatment in a very scientific way without asking for. Similarly, there are areas in medical affairs sector which I can.
Awesome. Awesome. I think you have stuck to the basics and still making so much of sense out of whatever you told us today. Few things are actually very thought provoking, especially on the leadership front. So, with that, I would really like to thank you for being the part of this podcast. And I hope you also had a good time sharing your
Yeah.
thoughts with me.
Thanks a lot, Amit. I really appreciate this. And if there's anything else that I can do to help the community at large, please feel free to involve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.